You're probably seeing a lot of content about trying to get into real estate investing, and you're probably thinking that you need to be rich. But fortunately for you, there is a amazing woman named Stella Han who is going to be a guest on the podcast. And she's the CEO of a company called Fractional. And Fractional has figured out the secret way to be able to own real estate for as little as $5,000. This company allows investors to bring their deals and then have investors to bring in their money and co-own properties together. So we're going to be talking about the 6 house portfolio that we closed in 2024 and also help you learn more about the actual company and what Fractional does. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, Stella, what's going on?
Hey, Tim. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we last connected, so I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, same here. As far as I can tell, we're both starting 2025 with a huge bang. So excited to just keep this going.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, a lot of people know who you are, what your company's about, but can you kind of introduce yourselves for the people that don't know who you are?
Yeah, sure, of course. Well, I'm Stella Han. I am the CEO and co-founder of Fractional, and that is a platform for investors to actually co-own and co-invest in real estate together. So pretty much handling the entire process from getting people to collaborate together, become co-investors, to setting up all the legal work with LLCs, operating agreement, to everything back office throughout the lifetime of the investment as well. And then personally for me, I'm also a real estate investor. I started investing actually over 6 years ago now because it's 2025. I always have to remember to up that number by a year. And, I actually only invest out of state. I personally live in the Bay Area in California where, it just costs $1 million to buy a shack. And that's not something that I could do.
Yep.
So only investing out of state. Actually, most of my portfolio I co-own with other people. So it makes it feel really, really full circle. And then, yeah, right now, still looking to grow my personal portfolio and looking to grow fractional as well.
Wow, I freaking love that. How did you first get started in real estate investing? And you obviously figured out, you're like, wow, I'm not going to do my local backyard. How did you also decide to go virtual and go out of state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it really just came from, seeing my parents do it when I was growing up. So for, in my entire childhood, my parents, they were actually more casually just doing fix and flips in the Bay Area. And I'm sure you can relate to this, but, they basically used me as their cheap, family labor. So I spent a lot of time like on the weekends, like going to Home Depot with them. Like we kind of joked that that was our Disneyland. Like I would be like in the house, like covering my nose, like trying to paint the property and everything. But definitely saw just, what it did for our family financially and even emotionally, right? It's like you're working towards something that you can control the full destiny of. Like that feels really freaking amazing, right? It's like a whole new level of empowerment. So I really just saw like, what that brought to my parents. And I think, that just planted a seed where it's like, oh yeah, like when I have capital, I want to build my portfolio. I want to do real estate investing. So that's pretty much what happened. I come from a software engineering background and, had a W-2 coming out of college and first paycheck in, I was like, how do I invest in real estate? I was like, maybe I can do flips in the Bay Area. Looked at the prices and I was like, just kidding, that's not gonna work. And then, everybody around me was like talking about out of state investing. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, right? Like, I want to find the next Bay Area, right? Before it becomes Bay Area. But once I actually got into it, it was just such an intimidating process. Like, I never really set foot to anywhere else. Like, I was really interested in Atlanta, but I was like, I don't really know these neighborhoods. Like, I don't know what to pick. Like, I don't want to do the wrong thing and just put all my life savings away buying a house, right? Because I was just a new grad at that time. I remember like just being on bigger pockets and lurking around for like a few hundred hours every week trying to figure it out. And it was so hard to pull the trigger until I actually found a few investors just from different like networking communities I was a part of. They already, bought long-term rentals in Atlanta. They had some experience and they were, willing to essentially let me partner with them on my first deal where we could split the down payment together and they can show me the ropes along the way. That was just such a huge game changer for me where, I felt like I lowered my risk. And the best thing is like actually learning how investing worked by doing it. And, that's how I got a 0 to 1. And now as I'm scaling, it's like I still need partners, right? One, I don't have infinite capital. And two, I would
Yep.
ideally like to build a team of investors who have, complementary skill sets of me where they can bring something to the table as well. So that was like pretty much all the inspiration for creating Fractional as a company. It was just such a no-brainer that people should partner with each other when it comes to real estate investing. There's obviously a lot of friction in that process, so wanted to just build a product that made partnerships a no-brainer decision, and make that as easy of a process as possible.
Yeah, that is freaking awesome because obviously you guys probably deal with a ton of new investors that are coming into the fractional community looking for their first deal, looking to co-own. And a lot of people that we probably both talk to are trying to get into the game of real estate and they just sit on bigger pockets or they sit on University. So what kind of like what was like a big pushing factor for you to kind of screen your partners and to figure out, hey, I trust this person to like dump half the investment in? And how did that process go for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, the relationship was very natural, and I think that is what ends up building a lot of trust, right? Like it wasn't like my partners came to me and they were like, invest with me, I'll make you $1 million or anything like that, right? Like they were delivering so much value just when we were, just hang out with each other, right? Like being a part of the same group. Like I was in the process of trying to figure things out on my own, and those folks just became kind of like the first name that came to mind whenever I had a question or I needed help. Like I might like ask them like, oh, like I'm thinking of, this market, like what do you think? Like what do you think I should look for, etc. Right. So when they became my go-to people when I needed help, that is just such great trust building, right? To the point where, when they started looking for the next deal, I was like, wait, I already trust them because I'm asking them like all the million questions that I have. So why don't I just work with them on a deal and just learn with them, right? Like that was just, how I made that instant connection where, I really feel like, as someone who does have more experience and who has the expertise, right? When you give back to the community and you're helping, newer investors, right? People that are trying to get a jump start, it just ties so naturally to, the next time you have a deal or you have a bigger project that you want to, get a collective force, right? Like the people that you've built these really great relationships with, like they will really, really want the opportunity to partner with you on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Well said, right? I couldn't say it better. So obviously networking is a big thing, getting people that are like-minded in the same group together. So when did you guys start Fractional? I feel like it wasn't that long ago and you guys are making a pretty big dent inside the real estate community. So
Yeah, well, we actually hit our 4-year milestone this month. So that feels like a really, really big deal
yes,
for me. It honestly feels great. Just like taking a baby that, started out with just an idea to what it is now. So that's been, super awesome. And, a lot of it is, tied to, everything that we've talked about so far, right? Like wanting access, wanting to pursue bigger deals and needing more capital and needing partners. And that is just synergy in itself, right? It's like you have basically two sides of the table and they belong together, right? And that's what, Fractional is about. And, us realizing that the trust and the relationship is so important. So how can we help people develop that and nurture that at, the very earliest point possible, right? When they're meeting new investors. So yeah, it's been kind of an ever evolving product. Like I am honestly learning new things every single day, when I get to work with really incredible people like yourself, Tim, and, even you going through the deal, right? Like I feel like the both of us learned so much to that experience. And, that's basically what keeps me super motivated every day is like, wow, like we've unlocked X and we learned this new thing. So like, let's now go unlock Y so that we can, really empower more people to get into the game.
yeah, no, it's freaking awesome. 4 years, congratulations. That's a big milestone.
Yeah, thank you.
I know it's grown a lot. So, but yeah, speaking of me going through the fractional process, I think we closed our deal in July of 2024.
Yep.
So it was a 6 condo portfolio out in Iowa City. And for you guys who don't know, it was a seller finance subject to transaction, and I think we raised $156,000 in like 2 weeks. So pretty quick, pretty easy. And for us, the process was great because they deal with all like the legal stuff that we don't have to really deal with. And it was an equity deal. So whoever invested in the deal owned about 33% of the portfolio. So you get the tax depreciation, you get the cash flow distributions, and then ultimately when we sell the property or refinance, you get 33% of that cash flow or equity and also the profit margins, right? I do have a lot of people that ask me, since we went through the process, how does fractional get over the hump of like syndication and stuff like that? Because we had about 16 investors on this one deal. So I know that's like a burning question for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a brilliant question. So, essentially how it works is that, we are hosting a community which is composed of, you as the project leader or the community leader, and you are bringing people from your network or people that are finding you through Fractional that are interested in, some sort of investment thesis that you have, right? So in your case, Tim, like, people came to you because they wanted to do, creative financing deals and they know all the education that you've given back, like your background and everything. So then that becomes a very collaborative group. You all went on a Zoom together to, figure out about the deal. And then that turns into a joint venture where, everybody is going to have active collaboration and participation, right? Like people get to vote on key decisions. That was something that we had our legal team work with the investors on creating an operating agreement for them where they can figure out, how they can participate in, things like, selling the property, doing a refinance, whatever it is, right? Like figuring out a framework where they get the opportunity to participate in those things. So that's, essentially the process we're helping people run is like, you set up this investment club like community. And then once you have an actual deal, you actually joint venture together on it. And that is very different from a syndication or running a fund where, you have a very, very, clear cut GP LP dynamic, right? And what that means is, you have a general partner or a couple of general partners, right? They make all the shots, right? They decide every little thing that could possibly happen, and all they do is provide updates whenever they like, right? Like it's a very kind of one-sided conversation. Same thing with a fund. Like oftentimes, you as a limited partner, you're just investing the capital, and then you're kind of just left in this black box, right? It's really just up to the general partners to call all the shots, and that's what makes it a security, whether it's a syndication or a fund.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense because I remember when we were about to get ready to close, when we were doing the operator agreement with you guys, it was very specific, like who had the percentage of voting power, stuff like that. Now, obviously, because like we're the majority of the votes, like our say does leverage a lot of weight, but it is really nice that they actually do have a say and they actually do have a vote in the whole process, right? Versus them just kind of sitting back, parking their cash and just waiting for a check to come in. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for the education on the syndication for the folks that don't really know what syndications are.
Yeah, of course. I think this is definitely, one of the best questions to ask. Like, well, there's so many different ways to structure fundraising, right? And people are always trying to decide what's the best case for them. And, there are definitely cases where joint venture isn't the best idea, right? If you're trying to operate, 500 units, like, maybe you don't want so many cooks in the kitchen, right? And a syndication or a fund is a better route for that. Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important to understand, what's possible and then decide what is the best strategy for, a specific investment.
Yeah, for sure. So you did mention a fund. Could somebody, let's say like I raised money and I created my own fund, could I bring that fund into fractional or is that not recommended?
Yeah, great question. So you won't be able to bring a fund into Fractional, but we actually are opening up a new product line that is a little bit similar conceptually as a fund, but again, it requires active participation. And this is more full leaning into what an investment club is, right? So with a fund, how things work is like there is some sort of investment strategy you have, right? Like that is the thesis of the fund. People are, giving the fund, giving you the capital because they believe in this return profile, they believe in this investment strategy. And then the core difference is that with a fund, you being the fund manager, you get to call all the shots on how the funds are deployed, right? So what we're doing here is kind of a different twist of this, where with an investment club, you can still do the same thing where, you tell people, hey, I'm interested in, let's just say midterm rentals in Atlanta that hits, a 7% cap rate with, I don't know, 20% IRR, right? I'm just, making up random numbers on my head, but, some sort of thesis as well, right? And then you say, hey, who's also interested in investing in these types of deals with me? If that's the case, like, let's pour capital up front so that, we have everything ready when the right deals, come to our desk, and we can together as a collective vote yes or no on whether this specific deal fits this original thesis that we agreed on. So you can see it's kind of similar to a fund, right? But it is a group decision, right? It is not you as the fund manager just, deciding how the money is going. It's you as, the club leader, right? Bringing it back to your club members who have committed their money into investing together as a group. And, just giving everybody the opportunity to look at the investment together, right? As an investment club, and just make sure, right? Like, whatever this deal is, it's not in Dallas, Texas, because we said it was in Atlanta, Georgia before,
Yeah.
right? So that's like how, we would support that case. And that is actually something that we're seeing a lot of leaders take advantage of now, because, they want to, not miss out on the golden opportunities when they come by, right? Because things have to move really quickly. And if you don't have the capital ready, you're, really just against the clock. And that's a really stressful situation for everyone. So it's like, why don't we get ready beforehand? I already know what I'm looking for. Let's find partners. Let's find capital who's, interested in the same thing. And then, we're ready to act as a group and move quickly on the deals that make sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And it's actually crazy because I was on the Fractional app a couple days ago, and there was a message from a lady that attended the first Zoom. So like the very first Zoom in like May 2024, and she missed that boat. So we like filled up the like the investments, and then she actually missed that train. But what she did was she messaged me on the side, was like, "Hey, if you have any other deals in Iowa, this is what I'm looking for, and like this is X amount of money that I have for your investment." So it's like, you get people to like buy into like, what you guys are trying to do and what you guys are trying to sell. So right now, like, how many active users are you guys at right now?
Yeah, well, we have more than 100,000 users, which
Holy
is
cow.
really, really awesome. And, I think it really just proves the power of the network effect, right? Because we're all about helping people build their own network, build their own community of investors. So, have, you, Tim, right? Like, I feel like anyone who wants to do creative financing, wants to do wholesaling, I know you have a new thesis you're working on next too, right? Like, people see you as the role model. They want the opportunity to do something with you, and that's why they're going to come to the platform. They're going to be so excited, and they're going to get into business with you. So that is really why, like, I feel like there is just so much to unlock with, what we're doing. It's like everybody has such a powerhouse of a network. So if we can, really help people take advantage of that, right? Like unlock, things that, each side of the table has, then, you really get to propel people to greatness.
Yeah. Speaking of the new thesis, yeah, I'm pretty excited to kind of launch into this because it's kind of a scary space, right? The residential assisted living space. And if people don't know, it's kind of like co-living in a way. It's a co-living model, but it's for elderly people. And they usually rent by the bed or rent by the room. And I think it's going to be really exciting because a lot of people have heard about it, but they haven't really dove in. So if we have that type of opportunity on the fractional community, like I think that'd be pretty exciting. So
Yeah, I'm definitely
yeah,
personally very excited. I heard about it at a conference late last summer, and I just remember it was kind of like the buzz that was like going through the whole conference. Like everyone's like, "Oh, do you know anyone who knows how to do, residential assisted living? I'm really
yep,
into it." I'm like, "Man, like I'm also really into it, but I'm also trying to find who's trying to do it." So now we know, right? Now we go to Tim. So yeah, count me in. Count me in when that opportunity is there, and I would love to work on it together.
yeah. No, I'm excited. But yeah, same thing. We've been like scouring the earth trying to find other investors. Like
you ask and they're like, "Oh, I don't know many people that do it," but once you get into, like, the group, there's, like, a handful of people, we all kinda know each other, which is kinda
Yeah.
cool. So it's been pretty cool, like, learning about the asset class. But speaking about different deals on the platform, what's been, like, the most common type of deals that you guys have been seeing?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because we've seen it evolve throughout time as well. And it definitely makes sense, right? Because I think what types of deals people are pursuing are definitely very dependent on the market situation. Back when we just started, I would say, just pretty simple stuff like long-term rentals, short-term rentals. They were just really, really hot, right? Because, the vacation traveling market was up. Interest rates weren't that high back then, so long-term rentals could still cash flow. Like just the simple stuff all worked, right? And then, when the interest rates started going up and up and up and up, like, we could definitely see that our users were having a bit of a confusion moment themselves too, where, you know, kind of the deals they were pursuing were just kind of becoming a really mixed bag because things just didn't really work the way they did. I think now, especially, working with the sub two community and just with how, rates have gone, right? Like creative financing, seller financing, sub two, all of that is, has been a huge hike. And I think, one of the reasons why, your deal was, something that people really looked forward to, right? Because a lot of investors, they've heard about the concept of creative financing, they're not quite sure how to make it work themselves. And it is kind of intimidating as a concept a little bit too, right? So, when you came with that opportunity, it was a no-brainer for a lot of people where, they got to understand, how seller financing and stuff to work by being an equity owner, right? Like it means they truly are, part of this, initiative, right? In this business to figure it out and do it with you. That means something even from an emotional level as well when you can call yourself an owner of something, right? So I would say, yeah, like creative financing, definitely that's been more common. We've seen, lending opportunities as well for people that, decide that, hey, I'm actually okay not being an equity owner. I am cool, being on the other side of the table and, watching a really great operator go fix and flip their property. So you kind of get that HGTV experience without lifting a hammer type of feeling. So that's been popular lately too. And I'm sure things will change, right? Like as the market changes, I think, different deals will make more sense based on the time. So yeah, pretty excited to see what's to come and super excited about your assisted living project too.
Yeah, it's pretty funny that you kinda mention, the emotional feeling that people get, right? Because out of the 16 investors that we had, I think like 14 of them have never done real estate. So they were first time investors, and then they get the ability to tell all their friends, family, other investors, and they say their first deal was a 6 house portfolio subject to seller finance. And like when they explain like, how the debt service and all that stuff was structured, they're blowing people's minds.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, "Dude, we bought this house at, like" I think the seller finance note was, like, 3.5%, and we bought that in 2024. So,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
rates were, like, what, 6 to 7% if you were to get normal financing, so it's pretty crazy for these people to, like, be able to say that, and it gives them a ton of credibility when they decide to go forward on their own, so they have that background. So yeah, it's been really cool. It's been really cool seeing their excitement. And then, obviously we have an update for them next week where we'll hop on a Zoom. And, I think that's the really cool thing about this is that they're involved, right? Like we try to get people on the Zoom calls and sometimes they can't come on. So we'll send them like an email update, whatever. But I think overall it's been a really cool experience. And we're getting ready to do their taxes for 2024. So that's been fun. So we're trying to work through that right now. And you guys have been super helpful on that as well.
Of course. And I love that you bring up the Zoom meeting because that is part of the collaboration and part of the access and opportunity, right? Like I've invested in syndications where the best that I can get is an email update. Like forget trying to get my general partners on a Zoom call with me and like talking things out with them, right? Like that is just not how things go when you're involved in something like that versus, a joint venture, something that's collaborative. Like, yeah, you're willing to hop on a Zoom and, talk things out with them, have them ask questions, make any decisions you need, right? Like that is what being, a co-owner means, right? Being in something very collaborative. And, I think that builds stronger relationships as well, where, the next time you're doing another deal, like people feel so good because they've worked with you much more intimately to understand like how you are as an investor, and that just builds so much more trust to pursue another big thing again.
I do wanna ask you or highlight something that's super important, right? So obviously, fractional people are owning fractions of the property or investment. For people that are just starting out, what's been like the typical like minimum investment amount for like users?
Yeah, great question. So generally on the platform, our minimum is $5,000. That's the starting point. And the reason why we chose that, it goes back to the ownership, right? Like we want people to invest something where they feel like they still have enough skin in the game, right? Where they feel like they're an actual co-owner in something. If you're just investing $500, $100, like good luck, right? Like, yeah, you can call yourself your owner, but like everybody knows you're not actually, right? It's not the same type of feeling. So
Yeah.
that's why we set it to 5,000. We still want to make it approachable, accessible, but at the same time, ownership is really important to all of us, and why you should be on Fractional in the first place, right? So that's the minimum, but as a company, as Fractional, we obviously, don't control the investments and how they're run, right? Just think of us as a platform. You own the property, you're finding your partners, you make decisions. Given that, that's the case, the minimum for each project is going to be different as well. So that's something to keep an eye out for, right? So to give a more concrete example, Tim, for your first deal, right? Like you were, totally fine working with, more investors. You set the minimum to 5,000, but, maybe for your next deal, right? Like maybe it's something that requires, something a little bit more intimate where you can't have, so many people in the investment, or maybe the investment is just a lot bigger where, if the minimum was 5,000, like, you never get there, right? Like that's just impossible
Yeah.
to coordinate. So, you might set the minimum to be 10, 20, even, 50K next time, right? So that's, why people choose different minimums. It kind of goes down to like how big, the deal is, right? How many people that leader is comfortable kind of, corralling and nurturing, right? I think that's a very personal choice that, there's kind of no
Yeah.
wrong answer. So yeah, that's something to look out for as well, just to, see what the minimum is for each project.
Makes perfect sense. And for people that, are investing, that are bringing deals to the platform, I do want to say, like, if you're using the fractional platform, do not stop networking on your own, right? Because a lot of people, I feel like, they have the misconception like, oh, I'm going to throw this deal on the platform. It's going to get 100% funded from the platform. And I think we got about 70% of the deal funded from other community members that weren't in my circle, right? So that weren't in like Tim's fractional group. And so that's what's crazy about it, right? It gets a lot of exposure, 100,000 users now. So when a deal gets blasted, everyone sees it. But also, I brought the 30% remaining from my own network. Like, there's nothing wrong with telling somebody that you know in real life to come on the fractional app and participate in the deal. So that's like, I think that's like the, advanced level tips, right? Like, don't stop networking, right? Bring people into the community and then they can be a part
Yes.
of that deal.
100%. Love that you brought that up because that is exactly how you should think about things, right? Like Fractional, we're bringing more eyeballs, we're bringing access to a lot of people, but we are not a magical fundraising platform that will just bring you the capital that you need. Like that is not how things work. And building your own network of investors who want to invest with you, like that is 1,000% the way you should go. Even if Fractional didn't exist, right? Like you should most definitely build that network, as early as possible, and that ends up helping you find people that you don't know on Fractional as well, right? Because people that don't have a pre-existing relationship with you and they're building that relationship just from Fractional, they're obviously going to have a much larger ramp up period compared to someone that you already know, right? And what's going to kind of push them over or give them more of an incentive to like want to network with you and check out your deal is probably, when they see that your, community is growing and that, your projects are getting funded by people, right? Like if a project is on Fractional, you're not bringing anyone from your network, it will likely just sit at like zero interest. And then, all the other users who don't know you, they'll just be like, huh, this thing is at zero, I guess it's not that important, whatever, right? Like there's not really a reason why they should pay
Yeah.
extra attention. But if you're bringing in, people that you have really great trust with, they're already, putting, their interests or checks in. Then for someone else who, doesn't know Tim as, their bestie, right? They might be like, oh, interesting. Like I see people are all like checking out this project. Like I don't want to miss out. Like let me come in here and like figure out what this thing is. And then, next time, they'll join your Zoom session where, they get to meet you more face to face, right? Listen to you talk, do underwriting with you. And then, that will catapult them into, investing with you. So yeah, to your point, Tim, like everything ties so closely together. Definitely focus on, building your own network of investors who want to do business with you.
Oh my gosh. Do you know what was like the craziest experience when we were doing our first like live Zoom? And like Adam is like, Adam's like the underwriter guy, super big math guy. And we were getting questions in the chat. Adam's answering them, all that stuff. And we're literally seeing the investment ticker like go up, like while we're
Yeah.
in the Zoom. And I'm like, holy cow. Like, I think in like the first like 40 minutes, we raised like 25 or 30 grand based off that first initial Zoom. And like, I've never seen something like that, which has been really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very like thrilling experience on both sides, right? Like for you as someone leading the project, you're like, holy shit, like people really love this.
Yeah.
Like they're getting this going. And then like as an end investor, you're on the Zoom, you're like figuring this out with people, with the project leader, with the other investors in the Zoom. And then you start seeing other people invest. You're like, holy shit, right? Like let me really,
Yeah.
really
Let me
consider
like go
this
in.
or I'm gonna miss out, right? And that's gonna suck for me. So yeah, I really think it's like it's so fun like when you see the energy like actually corralling together and it's like making progress on the deal.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are getting to the point at the end of the show. So I do want to highlight you for a second, right? In terms of what are you guys looking for next in the platform? Are you guys looking for more investors, more deals? Like how can we kind of help you get to that next thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes to both, definitely more investors, more deals. I think for us, it's really the leaders that come first, right? Because you really need great leaders to bring a great network and, corral, new people into their network to make this whole thing successful. So, if you're someone that has experience already, you want to grow your portfolio, finding partners, finding capital is important, then, we would love to, be able to help you scale and leverage the tools of Fractional. A big thing that we talked about was this new kind of initiative that we're doing with investment clubs where we want to help people form their group over an investment thesis so that they have their partners in the capital ready rather than being on a very stressful journey where we're trying to find capital when you
Yes.
have a 2-week closing on a specific property coming up, right? So that's another thing where we're trying to shift. Yeah, if you're someone that's looking to grow, you want capital, you want partners, definitely come talk to us and, let's get to this together.
I love that. And then how can people find you, Stella?
Yeah, great question. Well, I am obviously on Fractional. That is now the thing that I'm lurking around for 100 hours every day. So every week, I wish I had 100 hours every day. But yes, come find me on Fractional. Other than that, I'm pretty much like on social media as well. On Instagram, my handle is Hella Stella. Tim, that's actually how we initially met. It was just, through Instagram, which I always find is like such a cool story. And what else? I'm on Facebook, I'm on X. Yeah, but find me on
Are you on Link?
Fractional.
Are you on LinkedIn?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. I do not post that often on LinkedIn, but I'm on there.
Sweet. Okay. Well, I'll add all those links to the description so people can come and find you guys. And then my fractional community link will be in the description as well. So if you guys want to hop in, connect with me, we'd love to talk about it. Obviously, if you're interested in assisted livings, that's probably where you want to go. So, but Stella, ultimately, I'm so thankful for you and your community, and I appreciate you spending 40 minutes with me today. So appreciate it.